Today, let's talk about the difference between product operations and business operations. So if you are a person who has worked as in an operations team, doesn't matter if it's product operations, business operations, or other type of operations, probably you have come across to somebody questioning what is that you do for work, because it's not very clear for many people. So today, let's talk about what is the operations work, especially what are the differences between product operations and business operations. So now let's go through what are the product operations and then what are the business operations. First, what are product operations? So people in product operations, what they want to ensure is that we want to make sure that they're building systems that are going to help product teams build successful products. It's just as simple as that. They aim basically to build repeatable systems, ways of working operations that provide scalable solutions for the teams that are working with products. And these systems will focus in different aspects like strategy, execution, innovation, and customer satisfaction, and even building feedback loops. Typically, these teams are going to focus on three main disciplines. These are going to be engineering, product management, and design. Those are the typical ones that they are going to be working with. And they are also, in some cases, going to expand to other teams, like, for example, data science. It depends a lot on the company organization and the company ways of working. Product operations teams will work very closely to product managers, will work very closely to product leaders, like, for example, a CTO, a CPO, or a chief design officer. Is that a CDO? I'm not completely sure. Now let's go through what are business operations. Teams that are doing business operations, what they are doing is that they are building the systems and the operations to make sure that the company achieves business success. That is the main goal that they have. In order to do this, well, what they want to do is that they want to improve business performance, they want to improve revenue, they want to improve efficiencies and ways of working, ways of teams, of different teams, of collaborating with each other. This is one of their main worries. And how they do this? Well, again, they create processes and optimize them to make sure that they are building those smooth operations. So, for example, when you had to deal between sales marketing or between sales and product, those real operations, those ways of working are actually in place and actually they are smooth. And again, they want to provide those scalable solutions, those repeatable systems that will help companies create strategies or do a new market entry. So typically, business operations teams are going to focus on extended teams. They're going to focus more in sales, in go-to-market activities, marketing, sometimes product. In many cases, work very closely with executive teams, leadership teams, to make sure that the company strategy is being translated into the actions that the different teams are taking forward. And again, it will depend on the company. In some companies, they will be restricted to a certain type of teams that they will work with. And in some other companies, they will basically work with the entire organization. So you can see now a little bit the difference between what the product teams or the product operation teams are doing or the business operation teams are doing. The focus is on the success of the product or the focus is on the success of the business and building those operations around them. And I talk about scalable because teams grow and repeatable because they want the teams produce to a certain level consistent ways of working. Of course, you want to also promote innovation. You don't want to kill that, but you don't want that teams are working wildly different sometimes, and the results can be, in some cases, really good and in some cases really bad. So you want to maybe level up that base level that the teams have and leave that that freedom for them to be innovative, to advance, to get better at certain areas of their own crafts. So how these teams are different? Well, as I said earlier, the difference probably, hopefully now, is a little bit more obvious. In any cases, both are building systems. They are building those scalable ways of working to make sure that teams have some consistent baseline. You want to have that because you want to keep a certain quality, a certain ways of working in the company. Then the focus is where it changes. The focus on either the product success or either on the business success. That is their main difference. And that's going to change a lot the way that they work, the frameworks that they use, the operations that they build. So now let's go a little bit through what are going to be the areas where they work differently and how they do this. So when it comes to product operations, basically they want to create a toolkit for teams to do their work. So some examples of this could be helping teams to prioritize using different techniques like RISE, which is probably one of the most commonly used ones, but also other techniques that focus more on the research side. So for example, jobs to be done or something like user stories. So being able to help teams adopt these methodologies, these ways of working that is going to help them to a certain degree get more consistent in the way that they are working. They also participate and organize like workshops, facilitation. This is a very important aspect of operations, both in this case for the business and the product operations. They will also create processes. So for example, how do we do research? How do we do planning? How do we do execution? Again, they don't have to be super strict that everybody has to work in the same way, but they want to give that toolkit for the teams to be able to do their job. So many times what they are going to be is working as facilitators, and they are going to provide things like definition of that is going to help the teams understand that when things are done, when things are completed, when a project, a feature, an opportunity, whatever you want to call it, is actually completed. Why is this? Because they want to make sure that teams go through a typical process, as I said earlier, or going through discovery, going through prototyping, doing the planning, doing the implementation, the delivery, the feedback, building the feedback loops and making data-driven decisions. So they want to build this kind of path or this way of working for the teams, and they want to give that toolkit for the team to be able to do their work. In some cases, they will also analyze the data, will be responsible for analyzing prior data. In other cases, what they're going to be is more enabling. The data visibility is there. Make sure that we have the relevant systems that are going to bring the visibility on the product telemetry, how the product is being used, what is the adoption of new features or certain workflows by the customers. This is a very important thing that needs to be brought up. And it doesn't mean that all the time the product operations person is the responsible one for that. The responsible one should be the product manager, but in certain cases, they might not have the knowledge to do this on their own, so they can use the help from a product operations person to actually bring this visibility to their work so they can use this data to make decisions. In many cases, they are going to also manage OKRs, KPIs to ensure that there's alignment with the strategic goals. Again, they don't have to do setting up the OKRs or the KPIs themselves, but they have to make sure that the teams are doing it so they really are following on the developments that they are doing, making sure that really this is leading to the direction that the company or where the company wants to go and those goals that they want to achieve in the product. When we go to the business operations side, again, it's going to change because the toolkit and the people that they are going to work with and the teams they work with are going to be different. So one of the things that they're going to do is coordinate large-scale initiatives. Very often, what's going to happen is that there's going to be large projects that span across different disciplines. And in this case, it's business operations many times is going to take the lead to make sure that those teams are being aligned. Many times, the role of launching the product or the role of building a product falls a little bit on the product manager, but the reality is that the communication many times towards marketing, towards sales, towards, aligning the whole scope, it's not there. The reality is that in many cases it's not there. So business operations many times is trying to bring that alignment and that coordination across different teams. And they also focus on organizational scaling, because many times when you build these new capabilities, these new initiatives, big projects, and new products, that means that you had to change your organization. This is not a role that product people tend to take, because, well, it's not their responsibility. That's going to be the answer of many, which is correct. But the reality is that if you build a new product, you don't have the correct channel to sell it or the correct channels to support it, well, that's probably not going to be a very successful product, because, well, not going to sell. Even if it sells, probably there's not going to be anybody to support it. So a scaling organization, scaling teams, this is something that business operations tends to look after. The next one is that they are going to look into strategies, developing strategies for new market entry. And typically they're going to focus very heavily on the sales and marketing. So more in the commercial side, more in the go-to-market area, but in many cases, they are going to work very closely also with the product teams, because they have to understand why this was built. Of course, ideally, this happens from the beginning, and it doesn't happen in the end once you have the product ready, and then you try to figure out how you are going to align everybody, which unfortunately is the reality in many companies even nowadays. The next one that they're going to do, and this is very similar to the product operations, is that they are going to focus on creating those internal processes that are trying to be as smooth and efficient as possible across different teams. Product operations tends to focus, as I said earlier, in engineering, product management, and design, usually in those teams. Whereas business operation teams tend to focus across all the different teams, especially, as I said, marketing, sales, product, by product probably meaning the three of them, especially product management and to a certain degree or high degree engineering, but mainly product management is the one that is most involved when it comes to business operations. And again, what they're going to do here is that they're going to help provide the tools for the teams to do their work. Again, what is this? Well, this can be things like how you are going to do a market research, how to do a SWOT analysis, how to do a times and sum analysis, how to see what is your competitor, do competitor research. All these things that sometimes people might not have the knowledge on their own to do. They want to, again, build that common baseline, that education for the teams to be able to do their job. Again, you want to promote innovation, you want to let teams also the freedom to try and experiment and see what could work on top of that basis. But the operations team is helping building that baseline and really trying to educate, coach those teams to do a better job. And again, it's going to manage and optimize systems to help developing the business. Similar to what I said earlier from the product teams, you could argue that business and operations is going to focus more like on a customer journey, how customers are going to discover us, how customers are going to consider us, how customers are going to purchase us, how customers are going to be served, how they're going to adopt the product, how they're going to learn, how they are going to become loyal. Are they going to drive all this? No, they're going to work with other people to really build these capabilities, but usually they are going to help building and create the baseline of the requirements so the work is done by the different teams. That's how those systems are built to really develop the business, to really make sure that they can be successful or that the business can be successful. So if you think about people that are in business operations, people that are in product operations, typically they can be people that come from one of those teams. So for example, in product operations, they can be a very expert product manager, a very expert Scrum Master or Agile coach. It can be somebody that is a very expert salesperson or a very expert marketing person that cares a lot about how teams operate, how teams organize their work. These people usually make very good candidates for these roles. And this is usually the members of those teams are coming from those backgrounds. So if you want to start building an operation system in your company that's going to help your teams align the work that they are doing with the strategic goals that you have set, with the vision that you have for your product or your business, I have a webinar that is free and you can go and check it out. Go look at the description, at the link in the description down below. If you want to hear more about a specific topic of product operations, I have a video on this one. Go check it out. See you in the next one.